Nebraska's Dylan Raiola ranked where as far as college football quarterbacks are concerned? Find out next.
You are Locked On Nebraska, your daily Nebraska Cornhuskers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Good morning, and thanks for making Locked On Nebraska your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get podcasts and on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, welcome in. It is Thursday. I'm Mitch Sherman from The Athletic. Conor Happer of 1620 The Zone is with me. It is our pleasure to be joined today by Sam Kahn, my colleague, senior writer at The Athletic, and someone who's in the conversation as one of my three favorite people in sports media. Welcome, Sam.
I appreciate it. I want to know who the other two are.
I don't know. So I just can't have a conversation with more than four people in the conversation, including me, and then I never have to tell any of you who my favorite are all in it. So Sam is based in Texas and has covered all things Texas through his career, including Matt Rule's time as the football coach at Baylor. For me, going to any event in Texas, whether it's a game or a camp or a convention with Sam, is a memorable experience because everyone there knows him and everyone likes him, which is a great testament to Sam's reporting ability and his fairness. So that brings us to the topic of this day. Conor, you want to explain why Sam is here?
So The Athletic came out with a list. It's an awesome list, by the way. 1 to 136, every single starting FBS quarterback ranked with tiers. And it's not just a list that came out, which you just threw a bunch of names. This is well researched, and there's some reasoning behind it. So first of all, Sam was a part of making the list with his colleague Antonio Morales at The Athletic. So I wanted to first congratulate you on this because this seems like a huge undertaking, Sam. Like 7 tiers, 136 quarterbacks, and little blurbs and information on everyone.
It was. Thank you. I appreciate that. It was quite the undertaking. The idea came from our NFL colleague, Mike Sando, who does NFL quarterback tiers every year. And that has been really successful for us. And our editors, in particular Eric Single, had brought up to me earlier in the spring, what if we did college quarterback tiers? And we discussed it. And we discussed doing it a lot of different ways because 136 quarterbacks is very difficult. And should we categorize them? Should we say, hey, let's just rank all the returnees and then we'll rank all the transfers, then we'll rank all the freshmen or the first-time starters? And then after we got into it a little bit, I said, you know what, let's just try to do all 136. I think it would be a fun exercise. I knew it would be virtually impossible to do because how do you rank 136 quarterbacks? Let's be real about it. So, right. But the objective was, this is going to be as well reported as we possibly can make it. And so Antonio and I talked to more than 40 coaches, whether it was coaches, coordinators, personnel people, GMs, you name it, anybody who is in the game or has been in the game and watches a lot of these guys at a real level with a real level of expertise. And we talked to multiple guys in every FBS conference, even the G5 conferences, to get a real sense of, okay, what do you like? What do you don't like about the guys you faced? Where would you put the guys that you face? How would you order them? Where do they stack up in your own conference? And also, how do you feel about the best guys in the country? And so we started this project in the spring. I would say the really ramped up focus effort for the last 6 to 7 weeks, really from going into late May into early June. I feel like it was my entire June. Actually, I go back, Mitch, you'll appreciate this. I look back at my metrics at The Athletic. I didn't have a single written story published in June because this was my June.
Wow.
This was my entire June, was making these calls, doing this. We ended up, I think, like you said, ranking all 136 and separating them 7 tiers. And I counted, if we count all the little bio information and stats, this was over 18,000 words. If we exclude that part and just what we actually wrote about the quarterbacks and the paragraphs and stuff, then it was over almost 14,000 words. So it was a lot of work to get there, but it was a lot of fun. And honestly, I'm excited to do it again next year because this was so much fun to put together because it was almost 2 months of just talking football with guys. And I even a couple coaches, one in particular, I remember after we got off the phone, he said, man, he goes, we just talked about football for 30 minutes. He goes, I don't know when's the last time that I went a 30-minute conversation, only football, not transfer portal, not NIL, not everything else that comes with it. Not that there's anything wrong with that. That's actually my regular job is roster management and covering all that other stuff. But I still love the ball. We still love it. And I think doing that and diving in, watching guys, listening to guys, getting their expertise was so much fun. And you learn so much. And it was honestly a little bit of a way of preseason prep for me too, because it gave me a real sense for every quarterback situation from 1 to 136.
Okay, so go check it out. It was published Wednesday on The Athletic. Very much worth the read. You just heard about the process. So let's dig into a little bit. Cade Klubnik of Clemson is number one. As Conor mentioned, you had 7 tiers of quarterbacks. The first tier, these are the Heisman favorites, the guys with the highest ceilings. 10 quarterbacks in that tier. You get tier 2, tier 3, gets you through 30, and then tier 4, that is where you find Dylan Raiola, which is of interest to us here at the Locked On Nebraska podcast. Number 40, he is right behind Mark Gronowski, the quarterback from Iowa who transferred in from San Diego State, and then ahead of Navy's Blake Horvath. So that gives you a little bit of context. What did you guys find and think about Raiola that got him to be ranked 40, which isn't bad, by the way, when you're considering 136 quarterbacks and he's in tier 4 out of 7. What did you find about Raiola, who I think in the minds of the Nebraska audience is like a top 20 to 25 QB in the country? But that's very anecdotal and just observational, whereas here you guys did the research and talked to the experts.
Yeah, first I would preface this with saying, because certainly we got some feedback from Nebraska fans about, hey, how'd you have Raiola that low? And I would first start with, like you said, Mitch, out of 136 quarterbacks, if you're in the top 40, you're in the top 30% of the country, which is pretty damn good. That's pretty damn good in about anything if you're the top 30%. One of the hardest things to do in this exercise was stack guys up who have a lot of experience and are really proven guys against guys who are younger and don't have as much experience. And that was a real big challenge for us, is like, okay, how much do we take into account the resume to this point, which with Dylan Raiola, obviously a lot of attractive stuff so far, but he was a true freshman. The touchdown interception ratio, not great, obviously. And there's going to be some freshman mistakes there, but we also wanted to project where we think he will be and where we think quarterbacks will be going into this year. But and also, like I said, we learned one of this list, we went heavily on the coach expertise, and I like a lot of the comments we got on Dylan was, first of all, terrific arm. No question about how he can throw it, all the different arm angles, size, strength, great. Check all those boxes. The biggest questions we got from coaches on him was decision making, and I think a little bit of concern about mobility. Like, he's not a dynamic runner. And now these days, I think that is such a big part of the game. And we had a few guys like that, Josh Hoover at TCU, who's in the tier 1, decent runner, not a dynamic runner. Malik Murphy, who I think we had 30th at Oregon State, again, not a dynamic runner. And then Dylan is one of those as well. In today's game, if you are not adding that part of it, I think that's a big factor in here. You mentioned Mark Gronowski, who we have ahead of him, a little bit more of a dynamic runner, not a supreme athlete, but a guy that can make you pay on the ground. And so the extra added, and Gronowski also a little bit further along his career, a guy who our guys say would have been drafted had he come out last year, a guy with real draft grades, real experience. And so like we say, let's just say those two, Gronowski and Raiola. One thing I do want to stress is we try not to factor in we factored in a little bit competition, but we try to really grade these guys as quarterbacks on traits, ability. I would say we spend some time looking at statistics, a little bit, not a ton. I think, again, we lean mostly on the coach's perspectives. And so there are some questions a little bit about that with Dylan. And I think, even Matt Rule has made allusions to Is he going to be in the shape he needs to be this year? I know you guys have heard that a lot. Some opposing coaches and guys who have seen him in the Big Ten, I think, had questions about that. And so there's questions of, okay, is he going to be doing the things intangibly that he needs to do on a day-to-day basis to get where he needs to be? Because everyone knows with his status as number one quarterback recruit in the country when he came out, 5-star recruit, the talent is there. The ability is there. His question is can he do all the other things? But the one thing, and we included this in our write-up on him, was there's a lot of, I think, good feedback about his maturity, his swagger. He's not scared of the moment. He's gonna be able to kind of stand in there and do throws from all these different arm angles. He can get the job done. And so I would say we had some debate about it, even all the way up until the last day. Right? You know, I had wondered if we should maybe put him more closer to the top 30, ahead of a guy maybe like Jackson Arnold, or some of these unproven guys like Julian Say and Damon Williams. That was another factor. Okay, these young unproven guys like Say and like Williams, Dante Moore, those were hard guys to place. We placed those guys really high because the feedback we got on those guys was really high. Maybe some of that is because coaches don't have as much tape to pick apart. They got more tape to pick apart on Raiola because he started 12 games. You have nothing to pick apart from Julian Sayin because all you really have is his high school tape and what he can do in Ohio State's system. You know, if we were making this list individually, I think I would have Raiola a little bit higher than we ended him up with. But again, we did the best we could with the time we had, and that's where we ended up with him.
It's a really interesting way to frame it up, and I kind of wanted to ask you about the same thing. Like you said, he's a 5-star quarterback coming out of high school. So if he's a stock, he's starting from a pretty high place going into last year, but he's unproven. He has a year under his belt. It was up and down. There was a bunch of different versions of him last year, and now he goes into his second year with a new offensive coordinator that was there at the end of last year. Where is his stock?
Oh, you know
now?
about him.
Yeah. Where is his stock now compared to maybe where it was a year ago? Like, does what we saw from him last year almost hurt him in a way from the conventional, point of view?
Yeah, I think so. I think there's without question. And I think Nebraska fans can understand this with the offensive coordinator situation last year. I don't think that helped him at all. And that probably hurt him in the perception that he got from opposing coaches. And coaches and scouts know they can look through the traits and bypass that. But the tape is the tape. And so I do think, and this is one of the reasons why I think I'm a little bit more optimistic about him than where we end up having him, is I know what Dana Holgorsen does. I know what kind of offense he runs, and I know what a guy like Dylan Raiola with his talent can do. And so it will not shock me in the least if this guy's a top 20 quarterback at the end of the year, because Dana Holgorsen, if you give him a guy with a strong arm who's accurate, which Dylan is, and put him in that offense, he's going to make it happen. And it was a difficult situation to be in. It have to change the guy, have to change an OC midseason. But now that he has going to have a full offseason with Dana and going into that offense with some confidence, and oh, by the way, some extra weapons. Love Dane Key as an addition. I thought that was terrific. Bringing Dakiel Schwartz over from Kentucky as a receivers coach, I thought was a really excellent move for Nebraska. So I think they can thrive there. Got them some weapons on the offensive line, help shore that up in the portal as well. So getting him a little bit of more help on the supporting cast, I think, is going to help as well. That's the other thing is, with all these different situations, all these different guys, supporting cast ends up playing a role, in this stuff. And it's, we don't really talk about that with coaches. We're not asking, well, what do you think of the supporting cast? But I think when coaches evaluate these guys, that's part of the equation. It's, the Ohio State quarterback's going to rank a certain way because we know he's going to be good, but he's going to be good because the supporting cast are really good. Same thing with Dante Moore at Oregon. Like they're really high on him there. And they think he can be better than even a lot of his predecessors of late. But he's going to have a great supporting cast there. And maybe the supporting cast in Nebraska is not quite the same. So that's a challenge in all this as well. But I think he's ready for a big year. And I think Nebraska as a whole, I think, is ready to take a big step up this year. Anybody who's studied Matt Rule and knows his background knows the year 3 is a big jump. And he did it at Temple. He did it at Baylor. I saw it firsthand there. And I have no doubt that I think it's going to happen again here in Nebraska. I think he's got a way of building a program. I think there's a chance that happens again this year and his time in Nebraska. And I think it's going to be fun to watch and see how much that team grows, how much that program grows, and how much this quarterback grows in that time.
All right. Thank you so much, Sam, for all the time. Congrats to you and Antonio on getting this project out the door. I will see you soon in a press box or on a Zoom call or somewhere. We're going to come back at Locked On Nebraska after this and talk a little bit more about some of the quarterbacks that Sam and Antonio ranked that Nebraska will see in the Big Ten and on their schedule this year. That's coming up next.
But first, I wanted to tell you a little bit about the FanDuel Sportsbook as we say goodbye to Sam there. Good stuff from him. Summer sports, they're in full swing. Baseball's about to get fired back up this weekend. There is golf majors coming up. There is high-stakes soccer action, and FanDuel is the place for you to get in on the action. Make it a little bit more exciting. Maybe you're not an everyday baseball guy, but maybe you want to be. Maybe you want to check out a random game of a team that you don't care about. FanDuel is the place for you, whether it be a home run hitter, a player to hit 2+ hits in a single game, or just an overall winner the old school way. FanDuel's got you covered. In-game betting, preseason, of course, college football and the NFL are coming up as well. Same game parlays. It's all there for you. So if you're new to FanDuel, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if your first bet wins. Open the FanDuel app today or visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. All right. Once again, thanks to Sam Kahn from The Athletic for joining us. If you haven't got a chance to check out the list, please do. It is really, really, it's well sourced. Like he just said, I loved when, him explaining sort of the process and how they got to it. It's not just random, names thrown in a hat and kind of, which one's going to garner the most attention and stuff like that. Like there's almost a scientific process to this, which is really, really, really good. So Cade Klubnik, we could talk about the list itself for a second here, Mitch. Cade Klubnik from Clemson was number 1. That seems to be almost a consensus around the country. Whether it's him or Drew Aller, I think, both really good guys, NFL type of guys on really good teams who are going to be in the playoff probably. So I think that makes a lot of sense there. Garrett Nussmeier at 2 from LSU. Lenora Sellers, really, really high stock riser at 3. John Mateer, DJ Lagway, Drew Aller, Sam Levitt, Kevin Jennings, Josh Hoover, and Arch Manning round out the top 10. And so there's some Big Ten guys who are on the list as well. You mentioned Dante Moore at Oregon at 24. Julian Sayin is at 32 from Ohio State. Doesn't have a start under his belt yet, but he is the quarterback at Ohio State. And then, interestingly, Mark Gronowski, the transfer from South Dakota State, who's going to be the starter at Iowa this year, ranks one spot ahead of Dylan.
Yeah, that was really interesting to hear him say that. And the difference with, as you heard with Sam and like going through the process, the difference here between another list that you might see that pops up as like summer reading from various media sources. I mean, and we're talking about like trusted media sources too, is that, those things get thrown together based on the opinion of a couple of writers who are putting them together. Maybe there's a few phone calls made. Sam just told us that he didn't do anything else in the month of June other than work on this project. And they interviewed 40 plus college coaches and personnel people. So it's really more the opinions of those experts in the industry than it is of the writers, which is what you'll find if you look at this on from another media outlet. So, I mean, they may be wrong about Mark Gronowski, but they also found out from talking to experts that people believe he would have been drafted this year if he had gone to the draft from South Dakota State instead of the portal and ended up at Iowa. And we look at Gronowski at 39 and say he's ahead of Raiola and are like, what are you talking about, man? Like, this guy's going to Iowa. Have you seen Iowa? And that, as it turns out, is not a huge factor. It's more about what these guys have at their disposal as quarterbacks. And I would still argue that Raiola probably has more than Gronowski, more tools, but it's it's a feeling out process. Some of this is because Dylan has put more on film in the Big Ten. People have seen the interceptions, the criticisms that Sam and Antonio heard about Raiola, about his some of the decisions that he made as a freshman and his lack of dynamic running ability are fair. And it's understandable why he ended up at this spot. Now, do I think he'll be there in November? No, I think he'll be higher than that. I think he'll be a top 20 to 25 guy, and he may vault up higher, much higher, but that has to be proven on the field.
It is interesting though, Mitch, like I think, when you look at Dylan, I think there's probably a few guys on this list who would qualify in the same category where, they're really highly ranked quarterbacks coming out of high school, and then all of a sudden the first year they put on tape didn't necessarily live up to expectations. But I think when people look at Dylan from last year, they think about the worst version of him. They think about that version of him that was, right before Marcus Satterfield was removed from being the offensive coordinator. It seemed like it was broken at that point. But there was a version of him in the early part of the season that was really good and really confident, and seemed like he had a really, really solid base to move from. And then a part of him at the end of the season too, where things started to kind of get put back together a little bit. So honestly, I think he's a really great, Raiola is a really great buy low candidate. I don't think his stock will ever be lower than it is right now. And there's a lot of people that are pretty high on him still. So I think this is it's a kind of a good spot for him to be in, with not a whole bunch of expectations, but still a really high ceiling, as everybody knows.
Yeah. Okay. We could talk all day and do entire shows about Dylan Raiola and this quarterback list and other players who are on there and what discrepancies we might see because of the talent as we perceive it right here. But we'll save that for more shows this month. Dylan is going to be in the spotlight on Tuesday in Las Vegas at Big Ten Media Days. So we've got a mailbag show tomorrow. On Monday, we'll preview Big Ten Media Days along with Tuesday, talk about some of the storylines at Nebraska and around the league that you can expect. Wanted to say this before we finish up and go to our third segment and finish the Bowl of Fascination. So the ESPYs were on last night, and this is the traditional quietest day of the year in sports. Did you get to check it out? I saw you tweeting a little bit about the ESPYs. I was out a rare night where neither kid was in tow. My daughter's out of town, and my son had an event, so my wife and I were able to eat in peace. And wow. So I got home and turned it on. I think it was 45 minutes or so in. And so I didn't hear all of Shane Gillis's jokes as they were told live. I think I saw the good ones and the bad ones pop up on social media. How was it from your experience? There was some
awkward faces in the crowd. People didn't know how to react to a lot of the things that were being said on the opening monologue by Shane Gillis, and a couple things throughout the night as well, which was it was very different than any other ESPYs host. I'll just say that.
So two things.
They did some really good things, like you're about to explain.
Yeah, two things. Loved the piece on Katie Schumacher-Colley, the Penn State volleyball coach who battled breast cancer throughout last season. And, she delivered a bitter pill for Nebraska people to swallow, now in more ways than one, because she beat Nebraska in a reverse sweep with Penn State, not just at the Final Four in the national semifinals, but also a couple weeks before that to take the outright title away from the Huskers. And then she went and beat Danny Busboom Kelly, now the Nebraska coach, for the championship at Louisville. My thought in watching the piece that they did on Katie, and I wrote about her at the Final Four last year in Louisville, was that she was an unstoppable force last year, and you could see that come out in the work that ESPN did to put this together. She won the Jimmy V Award for perseverance.
Go back to, think about those last three for them. They beat Creighton in the Elite Eight, and then they beat Nebraska, and then they beat Louisville, and they're in Nebraska's current coach in the final. Totally team of destiny, unstoppable force. And if you watch the story, if you heard anything about her story, for good reason. You can't root against that.
You could also see Caroline Jurevicius with her Nebraska ties interviewed in that piece. So always brought back some memories from the last couple of years of what we've seen in Lincoln. So I also saw in my SB viewing experience the tribute that they did to Lee Corso. And man, that was really good. You had Kirk Herbstreit, Desmond Howard, Pat McAfee up on stage. And so no matter what your feelings are about those three, the part of the College Game Day crew, Corso, his impact.
Corso.
My God. Kirk Herbstreit is going to be it's like he's his son. Maybe we've talked about this before when game day comes into on our radar, but Herbstreit is going to be like half of a person without Lee Corso on set with him week after week on College Game Day. Like, did you see the way that he went over and helped Lee come on stage and go to the podium and was there just standing right alongside him when Corso gave his speech and accepted the tribute? Like it really is. I mean, like, set aside the skepticism, like it is pretty touching to see their relationship.
It really is. And I think ESPN did a really good job with that. And I'm excited to see what, unfolds on his last game day. It's time for this to happen.
Right.
I think it's a great thing that Corso will certainly get his flowers on the way out, because
he's going to be there on set for the August 30th Texas Ohio State game as the last appearance for Lee, at least as part of the show, to open the season. And like, no matter what, he's not there and hasn't been there the last few years for the analysis. And really, he hasn't been there ever, except maybe at the beginning for that. He is an ambassador for college football and has helped take the sport to a new level because of his personality and the way that he has represented ESPN in the sport over the years. So great to see that last night. All right. We are going to come back and finish up our dip into the Bowl of Fascination with three choices, including a bonus choice that doesn't play offense or defense. That is next. Okay, Mitch Sherman, Conor Happer with you. Final segment of this Thursday episode of the Locked On Nebraska podcast. Please get your questions to us if you have questions for the Friday mailbag. We'll be taping that, I don't know, tonight, maybe Friday morning. It'll be out by the normal time on Friday. So get your questions in, lockedonneb@gmail.com. And because we're doing a mailbag tomorrow, we are not going to do the Bowl of Fascination. We have been through 8 picks. The intention was to do 10, but as we whittled it down and picked names out of the bowl, we had to do 11, 5 on offense, 5 on defense. So far, you've heard about Demetrius Bell, Cortez Mills, Carter Nelson, Justin Evans, Riley Van Poppel, Javen Wright, Willis McGahee, Sierra Wright. And today, let's start with a defensive one since we did Demetrius Bell yesterday. Kiona Davis is up from the bowl.
So, I mean, is there any more fascinating? I think who fits this word, incredibly well, not only in terms of what his role is going to be for Nebraska this year, but also, his ceiling, his floor, what kind of player is he going to be? We don't know anything in that regard about Kiona Davis. We know, we know that they have high hopes for him. We
know he's very large.
We know he's large. We know that he's probably the one guy on the roster that, or maybe he's not the one guy on the roster, but one of very few guys on the roster that this coaching staff is not afraid to, be a little bit hyperbolic about and say, whoa, we have high expectations. This guy's going to be something. And his teammates say that about him as well. We are slotting him into a major role this year for Nebraska without having very many snaps under his belt. And everyone's just okay with that. So, I mean, you could get a lot of different things out of Kiona Davis this year, but I think people expect quite a bit for a guy who, like I said, hasn't played all that much.
Yeah, he's somebody that Nebraska ran into the transfer portal to go get after he thought that he wanted to leave. When Tony White left Nebraska in December, Kiona thought, And his defensive line coach, Terrence Knighton, left along with Tony White to go to Florida State. And there goes Kiona Davis. And it was like, that's a huge loss. That's a heavy, heavy hit for Matt Rule in this program to endure. And they said, hold on just a second. Let's see what we can make work here. And, I think there were some tactics and some negotiations and concessions used. Like there was why beat around the bush? They gave him more money. Okay. And you can't do that with everyone. Otherwise you lose control of your program. If somebody just says, I'm going in the portal, and you throw X number of dollars additionally at them, you can't do that. That's not how, it's not possible to run an efficient college football program that way. But Kiona Davis is that rare player who Nebraska felt it needed to keep. So they did what was necessary to keep him. And, I think they also helped convince him that the sky was not falling when it came to what was happening with the Nebraska defense. It was easy to think that for you or me. It was easy to think that for fans. Imagine what it must have been like to think that as a 19-year-old who had been in the program for one season and redshirted, and all he knew up to that point was Tony White and Terrence Knighton. So fortunately for Nebraska, he's back, and he is definitely there as part of the two-man potential wrecking crew with Williams Nwaneri. Is one of those guys going to emerge this year and turn out to be an all Big Ten, or let's say it, even like an all-America caliber defensive end, because they both have that potential in their careers. Nebraska has more talent in a two-man like future at that position, just the pass rushing specialist with Nwaneri and Davis. And if you don't believe me, go watch on August 2nd when they open up a practice at Memorial Stadium on that Saturday night, and just look at those two guys and tell me that they're not just different looking players. They look like they could be on the field at Ohio State or Alabama's practice.
Yeah. If you get anywhere close to the ceiling on those guys, you're going to be in really, really good shape. Okay, so pick number 2 out of the bowl here is going to be Dylan Raiola, who we've talked about a lot on this show.
Yeah,
in particular.
I don't think we need to say a lot more. We just spent 20 minutes talking about him.
He's very, very fascinating, and there's a whole ceiling floor thing with him as well. Like I said, I don't think the stock will get any lower than what it is right now as far as the national perception of him. Mm-hmm. A lot's going to be on his shoulders this year. He's the freaking quarterback. So yeah, there's a lot to that. There's the Dana Holgorsen piece as well. Fascinating. Archie Wilson is our third pick out of the Bowl of Fascination. Who is Archie Wilson, Mitch? He's outside of being Nebraska's starting punter this year.
We will find out. I wish we would have found out more this summer before Nebraska went to Big Ten media. We're coming to the end of this portion of the offseason where things are quiet and you don't get much out of Nebraska camp. An occasional appearance by a coach or a player with a media member that sheds light on things, but you start drinking out of the fire hose next Tuesday. Mm-hmm. And I'm a little bit sad. Yeah, I'm a little bit sad that we didn't get Archie Wilson before that, because I would have loved for him to have like a moment in the spotlight, and maybe in preseason camp that'll happen. Like they'll give him some time to go in front of the media, but it's going to be alongside 4,200 other things that are going on that day in at other positions. And I don't know that we're going to truly get to appreciate just like this, the unusual nature of his journey to Nebraska, where just in March, when Nebraska started spring practice, it thought that there was going to be a different situation, or everyone except perhaps Mike Eckler thought that there was going to be a different situation. The Huskers had gone out and gotten a transfer punter from Washington in the winter, but Eckler wants to go with this Aussie style punting, the rugby style punting. And they went and found Archie Wilson from the punter factory at Pro Kick down under. And here he is. Like, here's a football. There's a field. Go out there and make magic happen with your kicks.
Yeah. There's very few more fascinating situations than that. I mean, you just went halfway across the world to get your punter from this year just because he's, because he could do the style that you want him to do, and he could kick with both feet or legs.
That's the word.
Yeah, that's pretty exciting. So yeah, I mean, outside of that, we know nothing about the guy. I would say that we know nothing about the guy, basically, period. And he's going to be a pretty important figure in what Nebraska does this year. It doesn't get much more fascinating than that.
I guess the question is he the next Daniel Cerny, who was a punter from Australia that didn't pan out from Nebraska? Or is he the next Tory Taylor, who was maybe the greatest punter in, I don't know, like, sorry, Reggie Roby, but was he the greatest punter in college football history? Now punting for the Bears, just a
or like, Reese Dakin, who's their punter right now, who's from Australia and is really, really good as well.
That's Iowa's punter. Yeah, Tory Taylor was like a weapon of mass destruction at Iowa for his entire time there as a freshman through his senior year.
I like that. We'll take that as the poll quote for today. Tory Taylor was a weapon of mass destruction. He's a hell of a punter. He was an absolute weapon for them, that's for sure.
Archie Wilson's from the same school, the same punting school, and obviously Nebraska's hoping that it can get somewhere close to that kind of production from its freshman punter.
All right, that's it for us. 6 weeks until kickoff, ladies and gentlemen. And so we're getting into it starting right now. Stay tuned for the Mailbag Show tomorrow. We'll bring that to you at its normal time on Friday morning. Thanks for making Locked On Nebraska your first listen today. For your second listen, you can check out the Portal Show with Brian Smith and find it on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts.